He wasn't supposed to be alone with the baby, and when the house went silent, something inside the dark began to move. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Somewhere quiet, I hope. Because this story, it doesn't start with a scream. It starts with silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind that makes even the walls listen. The living room sits still under the fading light of a late afternoon. Somewhere just past 5:30 p.m., the golden hour slipping through half-closed blinds, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Dust floats in the air like it's holding its breath. The baby monitor hums faintly on the kitchen counter, its green light blinking steady, unaware of anything unusual. And in the nursery, just down the hall, a small crib rests near the window. Inside, a 6-month-old boy named Noah sleeps on his back, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, his tiny chest rising and falling in quiet rhythm. The kind of peace that feels fragile. The kind that doesn't last. On the floor beside the crib, lying still but not asleep, is Rex. A full-grown German shepherd, sable-coated, broad-shouldered, his ears slightly tilted forward as if listening to something far beyond the walls of the house. He doesn't blink much, doesn't move, just breathes slow and watches. There's no collar around his neck, no tag, just a faint mark in the fur where one used to be. His presence is calm, but not relaxed, like a soldier standing guard without orders. 3 hours earlier, the house had felt different, warmer, lived in. Olivia Carter moved quickly through the hallway, keys in one hand, phone pressed to her ear with the other, her voice tight, distracted. "I'll be back in 20 minutes. 30, tops," she said, already halfway out the door. Her eyes flicked once toward the nursery, just long enough to confirm the baby was asleep. She hesitated when she saw Rex. Just for a second. "Stay," she said, not entirely sure why she said it. The dog didn't respond, didn't wag his tail, didn't shift his weight. He simply looked at her, not with defiance, not with affection, just awareness. Olivia exhaled and stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind her. The sound of the lock clicking echoed longer than it should have. And then nothing. No footsteps. No voice. Just the house settling into stillness. Back in the present, the light has dimmed slightly. The warmth of the sun replaced by something cooler, quieter. The kind of shift you don't notice until it's already happened. Rex lifts his head, just slightly. His nose twitches once. Then again, there's something in the air. Not a sound. Not yet. A scent. Faint. Unfamiliar. He stands slowly, muscles tightening beneath his coat, his body moving with careful precision, like he's trying not to disturb the air itself. His eyes flick toward the hallway. Then back to the crib. Noah stirs, just a little. A soft sound escapes him. Not quite a cry. More like a breath that forgot where it was going. Rex steps closer. One step. Then another. His ears angle forward, catching something too subtle for human ears. A shift. A presence. The house is no longer empty. The baby monitor in the kitchen crackles. Just once. Then goes quiet again. Rex freezes. Every muscle locked. His gaze fixed now on the lower edge of the crib. Something unseen. Something that doesn't belong. Time stretches. Seconds feel longer than they should. The kind of waiting that builds without warning. Rex lowers his head slightly, his body positioning itself between the crib and the rest of the room. Not aggressive. Not yet. Just ready. His breathing slows. Deepens. His eyes never leave that one spot. Whatever it is, it's close now. And then, he moves. Fast. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just a sudden shift of presence, like a shadow deciding to act. The crib rattles slightly. Noah lets out a sharp, startled cry, his first real sound since the house fell silent. And then, everything stops. No barking. No crashing. No chaos. Just silence again. Heavy. Unnatural. The kind that makes your chest tighten without knowing why. Minutes pass. Or maybe seconds. It's hard to tell. The baby monitor flickers once more in the kitchen. A faint static hum. Then nothing. Outside, tires crunch softly against gravel as Olivia's car pulls into the driveway. Her headlights sweep across the front of the house, briefly illuminating the windows. Like a warning, she kills the engine. Sits there for a moment. Something feels off. She doesn't know why. Maybe it's the quiet. Maybe it's instinct. She grabs her keys, steps out, and walks quickly to the front door. Her hand hesitates on the knob. Just for a second. Then she opens it. The house greets her with silence. No crying. No movement. Just the faint smell of something she can't quite place. Noah, she calls out softly, already moving down the hallway. Her steps quicken. Her breath tightens. And as she reaches the nursery door, she stops. Because what she sees inside makes her heart forget how to beat. Olivia does not step inside right away, not fully, because something in the air presses against her chest like a warning she cannot explain, her fingers tightening around the edge of the doorframe as her eyes struggle to make sense of the room beyond it. The nursery that should have been soft and safe now frozen in a strange stillness that feels heavier than silence. The curtains barely moving. The late light fading into a dull gray that stretches across the walls. And then she sees it. The crib slightly shifted from where she left it. One leg angled just enough to feel wrong. The blanket no longer neatly tucked but gathered near the edge like something disturbed it. And on the floor, just a few feet away, Rex stands motionless, his body angled toward her but not approaching, his chest rising and falling slowly, too slowly, like he is holding something back, like he is waiting. And there is something on the floor near him, something dark against the pale wood, something that makes her stomach drop before her mind can catch up. And for a moment she cannot breathe, cannot move, cannot even call out her son's name because the worst thought has already formed and it is louder than anything she could say. Her heart pounding so hard it echoes in her ears as she finally forces one step forward, then another, her voice breaking as it finally escapes her. Noah. Barely more than a whisper, fragile, afraid of the answer. And Rex does not move toward her, does not wag his tail, does not make a sound. He simply lowers his head slightly, his ears shifting back, just a fraction, not in guilt, not in fear, but in something closer to restraint, as if he understands that any sudden motion now would shatter what little control remains in the room. Olivia's eyes dart from the floor to the crib, her body pulling her forward faster now. Panic overtaking hesitation as she reaches the side and looks down, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles turn white. And there, inside, Noah is there, alive, his small body curled slightly on his side, his face flushed from crying, his tiny fingers clenched in the fabric of his blanket, his chest rising in uneven breaths, but rising, still rising. And the sound that leaves Olivia is not quite a sob, and not quite a laugh. Something broken and relieved all at once as her knees weaken beneath her, her hand reaching instinctively to touch him, to confirm what her eyes are seeing, that he is real, that he is safe, that he is still hers. And Noah lets out a soft, tired cry at her touch, the smallest sound. But it fills the room like light returning after a storm. And for a second, everything else fades. The fear, the confusion, the dread, all of it replaced by the simple, overwhelming truth that her baby is alive. And then her eyes drift back down, back to the floor, back to that dark shape she had not fully allowed herself to see. And now she does. Now she lets herself look, and it is not what she feared, not what she imagined in that split second of terror. It is something else entirely. Something smaller, coiled but no longer moving. Its presence wrong in a place like this, something that does not belong in a nursery. Something that should never have been this close to her child. And the realization begins to form slowly, piece by piece, her mind catching up to what her eyes are telling her. The shifted crib, the disturbed blanket, the silence that followed. And then she looks at Rex again, really looks at him this time, at the way his body is positioned between the crib and the rest of the room, at the faint tremor in his legs that he is trying to hide, at the way his gaze never rises above the level of her hands, as if he is deliberately making himself smaller, less threatening, less present. And something inside her shifts, something uncomfortable and heavy, because the fear she felt a moment ago now has nowhere to go. It does not disappear. It changes shape, turning inward, becoming something closer to realization, to understanding. And she notices the way Rex finally exhales, a slow release of breath he had been holding for far too long, his posture lowering just slightly, not collapsing, not relaxing, just easing, as if the moment he was bracing for has passed, as if he no longer needs to stand between danger and the child. And Olivia swallows hard, her throat tight as she looks from Noah to Rex and back again, her heart still racing, but for a different reason now, a quieter one that carries weight instead of panic. And she shifts her hand from the crib, reaching down slowly, carefully, giving Rex time to move if he wants to step away, to retreat. But he does not. He remains where he is, still, watchful, waiting not for praise, not for recognition, but for judgment. And her hand hovers for a moment before finally resting gently against the side of his neck, her fingers brushing through his fur, feeling the warmth beneath it, the steady life there. And Rex does not look up, does not react beyond a slight closing of his eyes, a brief moment of stillness that feels almost like relief. And Olivia's breath catches again, softer this time, her voice barely audible as she whispers, "You stayed." Not a command, not an accusation, just a realization spoken out loud. And in that quiet room, with the last light of day fading and the first shadows of evening settling in, the meaning of everything that just happened settles with her. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Enough to understand that what she feared when she opened that door was not the truth. And what she sees now is something far more difficult to hold. Something that asks more of her than fear ever did. Something that looks like trust, given without words, and kept without hesitation. The house does not return to normal right away, because some moments change the air itself, and this is one of them, the kind that lingers in corners and settles into walls, quiet but permanent. Olivia remains kneeling beside the crib, one hand resting gently against Noah's chest, as if she needs to feel every breath to believe it is still there, her other hand still touching Rex, not gripping, not holding, just present, like she is learning a new language through contact alone. The fading light has shifted now into evening blue, stretching shadows across the nursery floor where everything still feels slightly out of place, the crib angled just enough to remind her how close something came, how fragile the line was between what is and what could have been. Noah stirs again, a soft, restless movement, his small face turning toward her touch, his eyes fluttering open for a moment before closing again. Comfort returning in slow waves, and Olivia exhales, a long breath she did not realize she had been holding since the moment she stepped through the door. But even as relief settles in, something else rises with it, something heavier, quieter, the realization that she had been wrong, not just in what she saw, but in what she believed. Her eyes drift back to Rex, who has not moved from his place, his posture still low, still controlled, as if he is choosing to remain smaller than he is, choosing not to claim space he could easily take. And she notices now the subtle signs she missed before, the slight tension in his shoulders, the careful way he shifts his weight to avoid making noise, the way his gaze never lingers too long on her face, always lowering again, not in submission, but in something closer to patience. And it unsettles her in a way she cannot explain, because it feels intentional, like he understands something she is only beginning to grasp. She slowly pulls her hand back from the crib and reaches for the baby monitor on the small table nearby. The screen flickers to life, showing a grainy replay of what had been recorded. And for a moment she hesitates, unsure if she wants to see it, unsure if knowing will make things better or worse. But the need to understand is stronger than the fear. So she presses play, and the room fills with the soft, static hum of recorded silence, the image shaky at first, then steady, the crib in frame, Noah sleeping just as she left him, the minutes passing in quiet stillness, and then Rex enters the frame, moving closer to the crib, his posture alert, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to something outside the camera's reach. Olivia leans in, her breath slowing as she watches, her heart tightening again, not from fear this time, but from something else, something like anticipation. Rex circles once, positioning himself between the crib and the far side of the room, his body angled protectively, his movements controlled, deliberate. And then there is a moment, a small shift near the edge of the frame, something subtle, almost easy to miss, but Rex sees it immediately, his entire body responding in a way that is both swift and measured. He steps forward, blocking the space between that movement and the crib, his stance firm, his presence undeniable. And Olivia watches as the tension builds, as the seconds stretch, as Rex holds that position without hesitation, without retreat, until the movement stops, until the space grows still again, and then slowly, carefully, he returns to the crib, lowering his head near Noah, checking, waiting, ensuring, and only when everything is quiet again does he settle beside the crib once more, resuming his silent watch. The video ends there, not with noise or chaos, but with stillness, with a kind of calm that feels earned rather than given. And Olivia lowers the monitor, her hands trembling slightly, her chest tight with the weight of what she has just seen, because it was not dramatic, not loud, not heroic in the way stories often are. It was quiet, steady, intentional, and somehow that makes it more powerful, more real. She looks at Rex again, really looks this time, not as a presence in her home, not as a temporary responsibility, but as something else entirely, something that had chosen to stand between her child and the unknown without being asked, without being understood, and without expecting anything in return. And the thought settles deep within her, reshaping something fundamental, because trust, she realizes, is not always built through time or words. Sometimes it arrives in a single moment and asks to be recognized. Her hand lifts again, this time more certain, resting gently against Rex's head, her fingers moving slowly through his fur, and this time when she touches him, he does not lower his gaze. He meets her eyes briefly, just for a second, enough to acknowledge the shift, enough to confirm that something has changed between them, and then he exhales softly, his body finally relaxing in a way it had not since she returned, the tension leaving him in quiet waves. And Olivia feels it, that release, that shared understanding that does not need to be spoken. She shifts slightly, lifting Noah carefully into her arms, holding him close, feeling his warmth against her, his steady breathing, and as she stands, she does not step away from Rex, she does not create distance. Instead, she moves with him, her hand brushing lightly against his back as she passes, a small gesture, almost instinctive, but filled with meaning, and the room, once heavy with fear, now settles into something else, something softer, something steadier, not perfect, not untouched, but changed in a way that feels grounded rather than broken. And outside, the last light of day disappears completely, leaving the house wrapped in the quiet of night. But inside, something remains, something that does not fade with the light, something that stays. The night settles in slowly, not as a sudden darkness, but as a quiet shift that softens the edges of everything. The house no longer holding the same tension it did just an hour ago, yet not fully at peace either. Olivia moves through the hallway with Noah resting against her shoulder, his breathing now steady, his small hand curled loosely against her collarbone, the kind of trust that does not question, that simply exists. And behind her, Rex follows at a distance, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to disappear, his steps silent against the hard wood, his presence constant, like a shadow that chooses to stay. She reaches the living room and pauses near the couch, lowering herself carefully, adjusting Noah in her arms so he can rest more comfortably, her fingers brushing gently over his back in slow, repetitive motions, grounding herself as much as him, her eyes drifting toward the window where the reflection of the room faintly stares back, a mother, a child, and behind them, the outline of a dog who does not quite belong to either world yet, not fully trusted before, not fully understood now, but no longer invisible. The clock on the wall ticks steadily, marking time in a way that feels different after what has happened, each second no longer unnoticed, each moment carrying weight. Olivia glances down at Noah again, her chest tightening briefly at the thought of how close she came to losing something she did not even realize was at risk. And then her gaze shifts toward Rex, who has stopped just a few feet away, sitting now, his posture upright but relaxed, his eyes not fixed on her, not demanding attention, just present, observing in that quiet, patient way he seems to prefer. And she studies him, really studies him in the soft glow of the lamplight, noticing details she had overlooked before, the slight graying along his muzzle, the faint scar hidden beneath his fur near his shoulder, the way his ears twitch at distant sounds even when everything nearby is still, signs of a life lived before this house, before her, before Noah, a life that shaped him into something she is only beginning to understand. And a thought forms slowly, not fully clear but persistent, that Rex is not simply reacting to the world around him. He is reading it, anticipating it, choosing how to move within it with a kind of awareness that feels almost human. Olivia exhales softly, her hand resting protectively over Noah's back. And for a moment she says nothing, does nothing, just sits in the quiet, letting the weight of the day settle into something she can carry. And then, almost without thinking, she speaks, her voice low, calm, not directed as a command but as an offering. "You knew, didn't you?" The words hang in the air, not expecting an answer, not needing one. But Rex shifts slightly, his head tilting. Just a fraction, as if acknowledging the sound of her voice, not the meaning, but the tone, the change within it. And that is enough, more than enough. Olivia leans back slightly into the couch, adjusting. Noah again as he stirs, his small face pressing closer to her, and she feels a strange sense of balance return, not the kind she had before, but something deeper, something built on awareness rather than assumption. The house feels different now, not safer exactly, but more honest, like it has revealed something it was holding back. And Rex rises slowly, taking a few quiet steps closer, stopping again at a respectful distance. His eyes briefly meeting hers before shifting away, and there is no tension in the moment, no fear, just a quiet understanding that settles between them, fragile but real. Olivia watches him for a long second before extending her hand again, not reaching all the way, just enough to close the distance if he chooses to. And this time he does, stepping forward with careful ease, lowering his head slightly so her hand can meet him halfway, her fingers resting against his fur, warmer now, softer than she expected, and she lets them stay there, not moving, not rushing the moment, just allowing it to exist. Noah shifts again, letting out a soft sigh in his sleep, and Rex's ears flick instantly toward the sound, his attention returning to the child without hesitation, the same quiet vigilance as before. And Olivia notices it, the way his focus moves, the way his presence shifts depending on what matters most. And something inside her settles completely for the first time since she walked through that door. Not because everything is perfect, not because nothing will ever go wrong again, but because she understands now that she is not alone in watching over what matters, that there is something else in this house that sees, that listens, that stands without being asked. And she draws in a slow breath, her hand still resting lightly against Rex as she closes her eyes for just a second, letting the moment pass through her, not holding it too tightly, not trying to define it, just accepting it for what it is. And when she opens her eyes again, the room feels steady, quiet in a way that no longer carries fear. The night fully settled outside, wrapping the house in darkness. But inside, there is a different kind of light now, something unseen but present, something that does not flicker or fade, something that stays. Morning does not rush into the house. It arrives slowly, like it is careful not to disturb what the night has already healed. A pale light stretching across the living room floor inch by inch, soft and quiet, touching the edges of furniture, the curve of the couch, the place where Olivia had finally fallen asleep sitting upright, Noah resting against her chest, wrapped in a blanket that had slipped slightly during the night. And Rex lies a few feet away, not asleep, not fully awake either, his eyes half open, his body still positioned in a way that allows him to see both the hallway and the front door. The same quiet vigilance that had carried through the night now softened but not gone. And when the first faint sound of birds reaches the window, his ears shift, his gaze lifting slightly, acknowledging the change before anything else does. Olivia stirs moments later, her breath catching as she wakes. The memory of the previous evening rushing back all at once, sharp and clear, her arms tightening instinctively around Noah before she even opens her eyes. And when she does, the light is there, gentle and steady, replacing the uncertainty of the night with something calmer, something easier to hold. She exhales slowly, her hand brushing over Noah's back, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the small warmth of his body grounding her in the present. And then she looks up, her eyes finding Rex almost immediately, as if she expects him to be there, as if part of her already knows he will be. And he is, in the same place, the same quiet posture, watching, not demanding anything, not moving forward, just present. And something in her expression softens in a way that was not there before, not hesitation, not uncertainty, but recognition, the kind that does not need to be spoken. She shifts carefully, adjusting Noah so she can stand, her muscles stiff from the position she held through the night. And as she rises, Rex lifts his head fully now, his eyes following her movement, not out of curiosity, but out of awareness. Always aware, she walks slowly toward the kitchen, her steps measured, the house different in daylight. Familiar again, but not unchanged. The events of the night still echoing quietly in the spaces between each movement. She reaches the counter, setting Noah gently into his small portable seat, her hands lingering for a moment to make sure he is comfortable, safe. And then she turns, leaning lightly against the edge of the counter as she looks back toward the living room, toward Rex, who has not followed yet, still holding his place as if waiting for something. And she studies him again, not with the same uncertainty as before, but with a growing understanding that feels both new and strangely overdue. "You can come," she says quietly, her voice calm, not commanding, just inviting. And for a second nothing happens, not because he did not hear her, but because he is choosing, deciding. And then he stands, his movement smooth, controlled, crossing the space between them with the same measured pace he always uses, not rushing, not hesitating, just moving, with intention. And when he reaches the edge of the kitchen, he stops again, not entering fully, respecting a boundary that had once been clear, that had once kept him at a distance. And Olivia notices this, the way he pauses, the way he does not assume permission, and something inside her shifts once more. She steps forward, closing that last bit of space herself, her hand reaching out, resting gently against his shoulder, guiding him the rest of the way in. A small gesture, simple, but it changes something, not just in the space between them, but in the way the room feels, more open, more complete. Rex steps inside, his gaze briefly moving to Noah, checking, always checking, before settling again. And Olivia watches that, the consistency of it, the quiet promise in every glance. And she turns back to the counter, reaching for a glass, filling it with water. The ordinary action grounding her in a way she did not realize she needed. The simple sound of running water, the clink of glass, the normal rhythm of a morning returning piece by piece. But beneath it all, something deeper remains, something steady, something that was not there before. She takes a sip, her eyes drifting once more toward Rex, who now lies down near the kitchen entrance, positioned where he can see both her and Noah. The same protective line he had held the night before, not out of tension now, but out of habit, out of something that feels almost like purpose. And Olivia leans against the counter, her fingers tracing the edge of the glass, her thoughts quieter than they were, less scattered, more focused. And she realizes something then, something simple but undeniable, that trust does not arrive all at once. It builds in moments, in choices, in actions that reveal themselves without explanation. And what Rex did, what he chose, was not something she had given him permission for. It was something he decided on his own, something he carried out without expectation, and that changes everything. She sets the glass down gently, stepping closer again, her hand resting briefly on his head, not as a test, not as a question, but as acknowledgement. And this time, when she touches him, there is no hesitation at all, only a quiet acceptance that flows both ways. And outside, the sun rises fully now, light filling the house in a way that feels different than before, not just brighter, but clearer, as if something unseen has been set right. And inside, in the small space between a mother, a child, and a dog who chose to stay, something settles into place, something steady, something that does not need to be named to be understood. The day moves forward in quiet layers, not rushing, not demanding, just unfolding in small, steady moments that feel almost unfamiliar after everything that came before. Olivia keeps Noah close through the morning, carrying him from room to room, as if distance itself has become something she no longer trusts. The soft rhythm of his breathing against her shoulder grounding her with every step, while Rex remains nearby, never in the way, never too far, his presence weaving into the space like something that has always belonged but was never noticed until now. The house feels different in daylight, not because anything has changed physically, but because she sees it differently. Every corner holding a memory of the night before, every shadow now understood, rather than feared. She pauses near the nursery doorway, looking in for a long moment. The crib now straightened, the blanket folded neatly, the room restored to what it was, and yet not the same, because she knows now what almost happened. And more importantly, what did not? She steps inside slowly, placing Noah back into the crib with careful hands, adjusting the blanket around him, her fingers lingering just a second longer than necessary. And as she steps back, she notices Rex at the doorway, not entering, just watching, respecting the space as he always has, and she studies him again, this quiet boundary he keeps, not because he was taught, but because he chooses it, and that realization settles deeper than she expected. She turns slightly, meeting his gaze, and this time there is no hesitation in her voice when she speaks. It is okay, soft, steady, and something in the tone shifts the air itself. Rex steps forward, slow and deliberate, crossing the threshold into the nursery for the first time without pause, his paws silent against the floor, his eyes immediately moving to Noah, checking, confirming, always confirming, and Olivia watches this closely. The way he approaches, the way he stops at just the right distance, not too close to startle, not too far to lose sight. And she feels something inside her settle again, something that had been uncertain before now finding its place. She moves toward the window, pulling the curtain slightly to let more light in, the room brightening in soft tones, and for a moment everything feels almost ordinary, the kind of quiet domestic scene that would not stand out on any other day. But she knows better now. She knows what exists beneath that quiet, what stands guard within it. She leans lightly against the wall, her arms folding loosely as she watches Rex sit near the crib, his posture relaxed but attentive, his ears shifting occasionally at distant sounds, always aware. And she realizes something then, something simple but profound, that safety is not the absence of danger, it is the presence of something willing to stand against it. And that thought stays with her as the morning continues, as she moves back into the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast, the sound of the pan heating, the faint aroma of coffee filling the air, small normal details returning to the rhythm of her life. But even in these ordinary actions, she finds herself glancing toward the hallway, toward the nursery, not out of fear, but out of habit, and each time, she sees Rex there, either at the doorway or just inside, maintaining that quiet watch. And it changes something in her, the way she moves, the way she breathes, the way she allows herself to exist within the space, less guarded, less alone. Time passes in these small moments, minutes stretching into hours, the sun climbing higher, light shifting across the floors, and eventually, Noah wakes fully, his soft cries breaking the calm, and Olivia moves quickly, lifting him from the crib, holding him close, whispering softly as she rocks him, her voice steady, her touch gentle, and Rex watches, his head tilting slightly at the sound, his body remaining still but engaged, always engaged, and Olivia glances at him again, a faint smile touching her lips. The first one that feels genuine since the night before, not forced, not fragile, just real. And she speaks again, quieter this time, almost to herself. You are part of this now. The words simple, but they carry weight, and Rex does not react in any obvious way. He does not move closer or make a sound, but something in his posture shifts, something subtle, like a tension that has finally been released. And Olivia feels it, that quiet acceptance, that unspoken understanding. She carries Noah back into the living room, settling onto the couch once more, the same place she had sat the night before, but this time the air is different, lighter, steadier, and Rex follows, lying down nearby, his body positioned once again where he can see both her and the entrance, the same protective line. But now it feels less like defense and more like presence, and Olivia leans back slightly, her hand resting on Noah, her gaze drifting between him and Rex. And for the first time since everything happened, she allows herself to relax fully, not because the world has changed, but because something within it has revealed itself, something she did not expect, something she did not plan for, but something she now trusts. And as the day continues to unfold, quiet and unremarkable to anyone outside these walls, inside, something has shifted permanently. Something that does not need to be spoken to be understood, something that remains long after the fear has faded, steady, silent, and unwavering. By the time afternoon settles over the house, the light has shifted into something warmer, softer, stretching long across the floors and climbing slowly up the walls like a quiet reassurance that the world has not stopped turning. Olivia moves more naturally now, not rushed, not tense, but still aware in a way she was not before, every motion grounded, every glance intentional. Noah rests in a small blanket on the living room rug. Awake now, his eyes wide and curious as he follows the movement of light across the ceiling, his tiny hands opening and closing as if reaching for something only he can see. And a few feet away, Rex lies on his side, not asleep, never fully asleep, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes tracking every small movement, every sound, every shift in the room. And Olivia stands near the kitchen entrance watching them both, her arms loosely crossed, her posture relaxed but attentive, a quiet observer in her own home, and something about the scene holds her still for a moment longer than expected, because it is simple, almost ordinary, but it feels earned in a way she cannot fully explain. She steps forward slowly, her bare feet soft against the floor, lowering herself onto the couch again, her gaze moving between Noah and Rex. And she notices how naturally they exist in the same space now. Not separate, not uncertain, just present together. Noah lets out a soft coo, his voice light and unguarded, and Rex's ears lift immediately, his head rising. Just enough to acknowledge the sound, not startled, not tense, just aware. And Olivia watches this exchange closely, the way attention moves between them without effort, without hesitation, and it settles something deeper inside her. Something that had been shifting since the night before, now finding a steadier place. She leans forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees, her hands loosely clasped as she studies Rex, really studies him again, but this time not searching for signs of threat or uncertainty, instead noticing the consistency, the reliability in the way he holds himself, the way he positions his body in relation to Noah, always within reach, always within sight. And she realizes that this is not new behavior. It is simply something she had never taken the time to see, never needed to see, until now. And that thought lingers with her, shaping the way she understands the past hours, reshaping the assumptions she had carried without question. Noah shifts on the blanket, letting out a soft sound that is somewhere between curiosity and contentment, and Olivia moves instinctively, adjusting the blanket slightly, smoothing it beneath him, her fingers brushing lightly across his small hand, and Rex shifts as well, not moving closer, not interrupting, just adjusting his position so that his line of sight remains clear, always clear, and Olivia notices again how deliberate it all is, how nothing about him feels random or reactive, everything chosen, everything measured, and she exhales softly, her shoulders lowering just a fraction more, a sign that something inside her has finally begun to trust what it sees. Time passes in these quiet observations, the kind that would have gone unnoticed before, the kind that now feels significant simply because she is paying attention. The sound of a car passing in the distance draws Rex's gaze briefly toward the window, his ears angling toward the faint noise. And then just as quickly, his attention returns to Noah, as if recalibrating what matters most. And Olivia follows that movement with her eyes, seeing not just the action but the intention behind it. And it changes something again, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to matter. She reaches for the small toy beside Noah, a soft fabric rattle, and gently places it within his reach, watching as his fingers curl around it, his face lighting with a quiet fascination, and Rex watches too, his head tilting slightly at the new movement, his eyes tracking the toy, then the baby, then the space around them, always scanning, always aware. And Olivia smiles faintly, not out of amusement, but out of something deeper, something that feels like recognition. She leans back into the couch, her hand resting lightly against her chest as she takes a slow breath, letting the moment settle, letting the quiet fill the space without needing to change it. And in that stillness, she realizes something that feels both simple and profound. That trust is not built through words or promises. It is built through presence, through consistency, through moments like this that repeat themselves without demand or expectation. And she glances once more at Rex, who meets her gaze briefly before looking away again, not seeking approval, not holding eye contact longer than necessary, just acknowledging. And that is enough, more than enough. Noah lets out another soft sound, his small world contained within the light above him, unaware of everything that almost was, unaware of everything that now is. and Olivia watches him, her heart steady, her breath even. And for the first time since the night before, she does not feel the need to check every second, does not feel the pull of fear beneath each quiet moment. Instead, she feels something else, something steadier, something that holds. And she lets herself sit with that, lets herself remain in that space without rushing forward, without looking back, just present. Just here and nearby, Rex settles his head back down, onto his paws, his body still, his breathing slow, but his eyes remain open, always watching, not because he has to, but because he chooses to, and that choice, more than anything else, is what stays with her as the afternoon light continues to stretch and soften, filling the room with something that feels almost like peace. Evening begins to return with a slower, quieter rhythm than the night before, not heavy, not uncertain, but layered with something steadier, something that feels like it has learned from what came before. The golden light fades again through the windows, stretching long across the living room floor, where Noah now rests in Olivia's arms, half awake, his small eyes blinking slowly as if trying to understand the difference between day and night. And Olivia sits with him in the same place as before, the couch holding the memory of the previous night, but no longer carrying its weight. Her body relaxed now, her breathing even, her movements no longer guided by fear, but by awareness. And nearby, Rex remains in his quiet position, not exactly still, not exactly moving, but present in a way that feels constant, his eyes following the subtle changes in light, the shifting shadows, the quiet sounds that fill the house as the day settles into evening. Olivia glances toward the window, watching the last hint of sunlight disappear beyond the trees, the sky turning a deeper shade of blue. And for a moment, she simply sits there, holding Noah close, feeling the warmth of him, the softness of his breath against her skin, grounding herself in the reality of what is, not what almost was. And she exhales slowly, her hand gently brushing along his back in a rhythm that feels almost instinctive now. A quiet reassurance passed from her to him without words. Rex lifts his head slightly as Noah makes a small sound. Not a cry, not discomfort, just a soft murmur of awareness, and his ears angle forward, catching it instantly, his body shifting just enough to remain aligned with both of them. And Olivia notices it again, that constant awareness, that quiet readiness that does not fade with time or light. It simply adjusts, evolves, remains. She leans back, slightly, her gaze drifting once more toward Rex, and there is no hesitation in her expression now, no question, only a calm acknowledgement of what he is within this space, not an outsider, not a temporary presence, but something woven into the fabric of the home itself. And the realization does not arrive suddenly. It has been building, layer by layer, moment by moment, and now it simply settles. Complete in its quiet certainty, she shifts slightly, adjusting Noah as he begins to grow drowsy. Again, his small body relaxing further into her arms, and she stands slowly, moving toward the nursery with a steadiness that feels different from the night before, her steps no longer cautious, but intentional. And Rex follows at that same measured distance, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to disappear, always within that quiet line of presence he seems to hold. She enters the nursery and places Noah gently into the crib, adjusting the blanket, smoothing the fabric beneath him, her hand lingering once more as she watches him settle, his breathing evening out, his small world narrowing back into sleep. And for a moment she stays there, standing beside the crib, her eyes soft, her shoulders relaxed, and then she turns slightly, looking toward Rex, who has taken his place near the doorway again, not entering fully, not leaving entirely, simply holding the space between. And Olivia steps closer this time, closing that distance without hesitation, her hand reaching out, resting gently against his neck, her fingers moving slowly through his fur. And there is no pause, no uncertainty in the gesture, only familiarity, only acceptance. "You are staying," she says quietly, not as a question, not as a condition, but as a truth she has already decided. And Rex does not react in any visible way. He does not move closer, does not shift his posture dramatically, but something in his stillness changes, something subtle, like a weight that has been carried silently now easing just enough to be felt. And Olivia senses it, not through sight, but through presence, through the quiet shift in the space between them. She withdraws her hand slowly, stepping back toward the doorway. And for a moment they stand there together, not separated by distance, not divided by uncertainty, but simply existing within the same moment, the same understanding. And outside, the night deepens, the sky darkening fully now, wrapping the house in its quiet stillness. But inside, there is no return of the fear that once filled these walls, no echo of that earlier tension. Instead, there is something else, something steady and grounded, something that does not demand attention but holds it. Nonetheless, Olivia turns off the light in the nursery, leaving only the faint glow of the monitor, the soft green light blinking steadily, and she steps into the hallway, Rex following as he always does. Not leading, not trailing, just present, and together they move back into the living room, where the quiet continues, unbroken, and Olivia pauses once more, looking around the space that now feels both familiar and changed, and she realizes that nothing visible has altered. The furniture is the same, the walls the same, the light the same, but something deeper has shifted, something that cannot be seen but can be felt in every movement, every breath, every quiet moment that follows, and she allows herself to stand there for a second longer, letting that realization settle fully, not questioning it, not analyzing it, just accepting it. And nearby, Rex lowers himself once more to the floor, his body relaxed, his eyes still open, always watching, not out of fear, not out of duty alone, but out of something that has chosen to remain, something that does not need to be named to be understood. And as the night settles completely around them, that presence remains steady, silent, and unwavering. The house grows quieter as the night deepens, not in a way that feels empty, but in a way that feels settled, like everything within it has found its place for now. The faint hum of electricity in the walls, the soft ticking of the clock, the distant sound of wind brushing against the windows, all blending into a steady rhythm that no longer carries tension. Olivia moves slowly through the living room, turning off the last remaining lamp until only a soft amber glow remains from a single corner. Light, enough to see, enough to feel present, but not enough to disturb the calm. She pauses for a moment, her hand resting lightly on the back of the couch, her eyes drifting toward the hallway that leads to the nursery, a quiet instinct pulling her attention there even though she knows everything is fine, even though she knows he is safe, and she exhales slowly, allowing that instinct to exist without letting it take over, allowing herself to trust what she now understands. Behind her, Rex shifts slightly, the soft sound of movement barely audible, but enough for her to notice, always enough for her to notice now. She turns her head just slightly, not fully, just enough to see him from the corner of her eye, his body stretched along the floor, his posture relaxed, but his eyes still open, still aware, still present in that same unwavering way that has become familiar. And there is something comforting in that, something that does not need to be questioned anymore. She steps away from the couch and moves toward the hallway, her footsteps light, unhurried, her breathing steady as she reaches the nursery door and gently pushes it open, the room inside dim, lit only by the soft glow of the monitor, the green light blinking steadily like a quiet heartbeat. Noah sleeps peacefully in his crib, his small chest rising and falling in a rhythm that feels almost sacred now, something she no longer takes for granted, something she watches for a moment longer than necessary, just to be sure, just to feel it. And as she stands there, she senses Rex behind her, not entering, not crossing the threshold, but close enough to feel his presence, close enough to know he is there without turning around, and that awareness settles around her like something steady, something reliable. She steps closer to the crib, her hand reaching out to gently adjust the blanket, her fingers brushing lightly against Noah's arm, a small gesture, almost instinctive, and Noah stirs just slightly, letting out a soft sigh before settling again, and Olivia smiles faintly, her eyes soft, her shoulders relaxed. And for a moment, she simply stands there, letting the quiet fill the space, letting the stillness exist without interruption. And then she turns slowly, stepping back toward the doorway, her gaze lifting to meet Rex's for just a second, a brief connection, not intense, not prolonged, just enough to acknowledge what is already understood, and she moves past him into the hallway, heading back toward the living room, her steps carrying a sense of calm that was not there before. A quiet confidence that does not come from certainty, but from trust, and Rex follows. As he always does, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to lose sight. Always maintaining that same distance, that same quiet line that defines his presence. She returns to the couch and sits down slowly, her body easing into the cushions, her hands resting loosely in her lap as she takes a deep breath, letting it out slowly, her eyes closing for just a moment as she allows herself to rest, really rest, without the weight of worry pressing against her thoughts. And in that brief stillness, she becomes aware of something else, something subtle but undeniable, the absence of fear, not because the world has changed, not because nothing can go wrong, but because she no longer feels alone in watching over what matters. And that realization lingers, steady and quiet, as she opens her eyes again, her gaze drifting toward Rex, who has settled once more near the entrance of the living room, his body angled in a way that allows him to see both her and the hallway. The same position he has taken again and again, not out of habit alone, but out of something deeper, something that feels like purpose. And Olivia watches him for a long moment, not analyzing, not questioning, just observing, letting herself fully understand what she sees, and she speaks softly, almost under her breath, not expecting a response. "Thank you." The words simple, but they carry weight, and Rex does not move, does not react in any obvious way, but his ears shift slightly, catching the sound, acknowledging it in the only way he needs to, and Olivia leans back against the couch, her body relaxing fully now, her breathing even, her mind quiet. And outside, the night stretches on, calm and uninterrupted, the world beyond the walls continuing as it always does. But inside, something has changed, something that does not need to be named, something that remains in the space between them, steady, silent, and unwavering. And as the hours pass and the house settles deeper into rest, that presence remains, not demanding, not fading, just there, exactly where it needs to be. The night stretches into its deepest hours without disturbance, the kind of quiet that no longer feels fragile but settled, like the house itself has accepted what it holds and no longer questions it. Olivia remains on the couch longer than she planned, not asleep, not fully awake either, just resting in that space between thought and stillness, her breathing slow, her body finally letting go of the tension it carried for so long. And across the room, Rex does not move, not in any noticeable way, but there is a shift, subtle, almost invisible, the kind that comes from time passing and nothing going wrong. His posture remains the same, his awareness unchanged, but there is less strain in it now, less readiness forced by urgency, more presence shaped by choice. The clock on the wall moves past midnight, each second marked by a soft, steady tick that no longer echoes with unease, just time, simple and continuous. And Olivia eventually rises, her movements slow and deliberate, not because she is tired, but because she no longer feels the need to rush. She walks once more toward the nursery, her hand brushing lightly along the wall as she moves, grounding herself in the familiarity of the space, and Rex follows, as he always does, not leading, not lagging, just there, maintaining that quiet distance that has become part of the rhythm between them. She reaches the nursery door and pauses, not out of fear this time, but out of habit, a moment of stillness before entering. And when she steps inside, nothing has changed, nothing has shifted. Noah sleeps peacefully, the blanket still in place, the air calm, the faint glow of the monitor steady and unbroken, and Olivia exhales, a quiet release that feels deeper than before. She steps closer, her hand resting gently on the edge of the crib, her eyes soft as she watches him sleep. And for a moment she simply stands there, allowing herself to feel the weight of everything that led to this moment. Not the fear, not the uncertainty, but the quiet truth that followed. And behind her, Rex remains at the doorway, his presence unchanged, his eyes steady, always watching, always aware. And Olivia glances back at him, just briefly, and this time there is something new in her expression, something that was not there before, not just trust, but something closer to belonging. She steps back from the crib and moves toward him, her hand reaching out without hesitation, resting against his head, her fingers moving slowly through his fur, and there is no pause, no question in the gesture. Only familiarity, only acceptance. "We are all right," she says softly, not to him, not to herself, but to the moment itself, and Rex closes his eyes briefly, not in sleep, not in withdrawal, but in a quiet acknowledgement, a release of something that no longer needs to be held, and Olivia feels it, that shift, that quiet settling of something unseen. She withdraws her hand and turns off the nursery light, leaving the soft glow of the monitor as the only illumination, and together they step back into the hallway, the house silent around them, not empty, not uncertain, just still. And as they move back into the living room, Olivia pauses once more, looking around the space that now feels complete in a way it did not before, not because anything has been added, but because something has been understood, and she walks toward the front door, her hand resting briefly on the lock, checking it, not out of fear, but out of routine, a simple action that now feels lighter, less burdened, and she turns back, her gaze finding Rex again, who is settled once more near the center of the room, his body relaxed, his eyes still open, always open, and Olivia moves to the couch, sitting down once more, her body easing into the cushions, her hands resting loosely at her sides, her breathing slow and even, and for the first time since everything began, she allows her eyes to close fully, not for a moment, not in hesitation, but completely, trusting the quiet, trusting the space, trusting what remains within it. And nearby, Rex does not shift, does not change his position, but his presence fills the room in a way that no longer feels like watchfulness alone. It feels like something steadier, something chosen, something that stays without needing to be asked. And outside, the night continues, uninterrupted, the world moving forward in its own quiet rhythm. But inside, within these walls, something has settled into place, something that does not fade with time or light, something that remains in the silence, in the stillness, in the space between breaths, steady, silent, and unwavering. The first light of morning returns again, quieter than the day before, softer. Somehow, as if the house itself remembers and chooses not to disturb what has been restored, the faint gray of dawn slipping through the windows, touching the edges of the room where Olivia now sleeps fully, her body finally surrendered to rest, one arm draped loosely along the couch, her breathing slow and even, and nearby, Rex remains in his place, not exactly as he was, but not far from it either. His body relaxed against the floor, his head lowered but not fully resting, his eyes half open, still holding that quiet awareness that has become part of him, part of the space. The clock ticks steadily toward early morning, and outside, the world begins to wake in small, distant sounds, a car passing far down the street, a bird calling once, then again, the soft rustle of wind moving through trees, and inside, the house holds its quiet just a little longer, as if allowing one more moment of stillness before everything begins again. Rex's ears shift slightly at the sound of movement from the hallway, subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to draw his attention, and he lifts his head fully now, his gaze turning toward the nursery before Olivia has even stirred, before anything else has changed, and a moment later, a soft sound follows, not loud, not urgent, just the gentle beginning of a cry, the kind that signals waking rather than distress, and Rex rises slowly, his movements careful, deliberate, crossing the space without noise, without hesitation, and he stops near the hallway, holding his position, listening, always listening, and behind him, Olivia stirs, her breath catching slightly as she wakes, not with panic, not with fear, but with awareness, her body responding to the same sound, the same quiet signal that something has shifted. She opens her eyes slowly, her gaze adjusting to the dim morning light, and for a second she remains still, letting the world come into focus, letting the memory of the night settle into place, and then she hears it again. Noah's soft cry, and she sits up immediately, her body moving without hesitation, without the rush of fear that once followed that sound. Just purpose, just instinct, and as she rises, she sees Rex already near the hallway, already positioned as if he had been waiting for that moment. And something in that image steadies her even more, something that reminds her she is not alone in responding, not alone in listening. She moves toward the nursery, her steps quick but controlled, her hand reaching the door just as Rex steps slightly aside, giving her space to enter first, and she notices that, the way he adjusts without needing to be told, the way he makes room without retreating, and she steps inside, moving straight to the crib, lifting Noah gently into her arms, her voice soft as she soothes him, her hand brushing lightly along his back, and Noah quiets quickly, his small body settling against her, comfort found in her presence, and Olivia exhales, her breath steady, her heart calm, and behind her, Rex remains at the doorway, his posture unchanged, his eyes watching, always watching, and Olivia turns slightly, glancing at him with a faint smile that no longer feels uncertain, no longer feels cautious, just real, just there, and she speaks quietly, almost without thinking, "We have got this." The words simple, but they carry a quiet certainty that was not there before, and Rex does not move, does not respond in any obvious way, but his presence shifts just enough to feel, just enough to acknowledge, and Olivia turns back to Noah, holding him close as she steps toward the window, pulling the curtain aside slightly, letting more light into the room, the morning growing stronger now, filling the space with a soft brightness that feels earned, that feels right. And for a moment she stands there, looking down at Noah, then glancing back at Rex, and she realizes something that feels both simple and profound, that what changed was not just what happened, but how she sees it, how she understands what stands beside her, what remains without needing to be asked, and she steps back from the window, moving toward the rocking chair in the corner, sitting down slowly as she continues to soothe Noah, her movements gentle, steady, and Rex shifts slightly, stepping just inside the room now, not fully, not crossing too far, but enough to be present within the space, enough to close that distance just a little more, and Olivia watches him do it, noticing the change, the quiet adjustment that mirrors her own, and she nods slightly, not as approval, not as permission, but as acknowledgement, and the room settles again. The morning fully arrived now, the lights steady, the air calm, the quiet no longer fragile but grounded, and in that space, between a mother holding her child and a dog who chose to stand watch without being asked, something remains, something that does not need to be spoken, something that holds through the silence, through the light, through every breath that follows, steady, silent, and unwavering. The morning continues to unfold in quiet layers, not rushing forward but settling deeper into itself. The light now steady and warm as it fills the nursery, wrapping everything in a calm that feels earned rather than given. Olivia remains seated in the rocking chair, Noah resting against her chest, his breathing soft, and even again, his earlier cry already forgotten in the simple comfort of being held. And the chair moves gently beneath them, a slow, rhythmic motion that seems to match the quiet pulse of the house itself, and nearby, Rex stands just inside the room now, no longer at the threshold, no longer holding that invisible line that once separated him from the space. His presence closer, not intrusive, not uncertain, just present in a way that feels natural, as if he has always belonged here, as if the boundary that once existed has quietly dissolved without needing to be named. Olivia watches him for a moment, her gaze steady, not searching, not questioning, just observing with a clarity that was not there before, and she notices the details again, the way his posture shifts slightly as Noah moves, the way his ears adjust to even the smallest sound, the way his eyes remain soft but attentive, always aware, always present, and she feels something settle inside her once more, not new, but deeper, more rooted, something that no longer needs to prove itself, something that simply is. She leans back slightly in the chair, her hand resting gently along Noah's back, her fingers moving in slow, absent patterns that speak of comfort, more than thought, and for a moment she closes her eyes, not to rest, but to feel, to let the quiet surround her without interruption, without analysis, and when she opens them again, the room looks the same, but she sees it differently, not as a space to protect, but as a space already held, already watched over in ways she did not understand before. She shifts slightly, adjusting Noah as he begins to stir again, his small movements signaling the start of wakefulness, and she smiles faintly, her voice soft as she whispers to him. Words that carry no urgency, no fear, just presence. And Rex steps closer, just a few inches, not crossing into her space, not crowding, but adjusting his position in response to the change, his awareness moving with the moment as naturally as breath. And Olivia notices that too. The way he does not anticipate too far ahead, does not react too late. He moves with what is, exactly when it is needed, no more, no less. And that realization lingers with her, shaping the way she understands not just him, but the space between them, the quiet agreement that has formed without words. She stands slowly, the rocking chair coming to stillness behind her, and she carries Noah toward the window once more, letting the morning light fall across his face, watching as his eyes blink open, adjusting to the brightness, his small hand reaching outward, grasping at something unseen. And Olivia laughs softly, the sound light and genuine, the kind that does not carry weight, only presence. And Rex watches this too, his head tilting slightly, his posture relaxed but engaged, always engaged. And Olivia turns toward him again, her expression open, her voice steady. He likes the light, she says quietly, not expecting understanding, not needing it, just sharing the moment. And Rex remains still, his gaze shifting briefly from her to Noah and back again. A silent acknowledgement that feels enough, more than enough. She moves back toward the crib, placing Noah down gently, her hands lingering once more to ensure he is comfortable, safe. And then she steps back, her gaze moving between the two of them, her child and the presence that has chosen to stand beside him. Without being asked, without being recognized until now. And she realizes something then, something that does not arrive as a sudden thought, but as a quiet certainty, that what happened was not an interruption, not an accident, but a revelation, something that showed her what was already there, what had always been there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be understood. And she exhales slowly, her shoulders relaxing completely now, the last trace of tension leaving her without resistance, without hesitation. She steps toward Rex once more, her hand reaching out, resting gently along his back, not testing, not questioning, just connecting. And this time there is no shift, no pause, only stillness, shared and steady. And in that moment, the room feels complete, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is understood. And outside, the morning continues, the world moving forward in its quiet rhythm. Cars passing, birds calling, life unfolding as it always does. But inside, something remains unchanged, something that holds through every moment, through every breath, through every quiet shift of light and shadow, something that does not need to be named to be real, something that stays. The day no longer feels like something that needs to be watched closely. It simply moves, steady and quiet, unfolding in small moments that no longer carry weight, but meaning. And Olivia stands in the center of the living room, Noah resting gently against her shoulder, his breathing soft and even, his small hand loosely curled near her collar. And the house around them feels whole in a way she had not known before, not because it is perfect, but because it is understood. The light moves slowly across the floor, stretching toward the place where Rex now lies, not at a distance, not separated by invisible lines, but fully within the space, his body relaxed, his posture calm, yet his eyes remain open, always aware, not because he has to be, but because he chooses to be. And Olivia watches him for a moment, not out of curiosity, not out of uncertainty, but out of something quieter, something deeper, a recognition that no longer needs to be questioned. She takes a slow breath, her hand gently brushing along Noah's back, feeling the steady rhythm of his life, the quiet certainty of his presence. And she realizes how fragile that certainty once felt, how easily it could have been broken. And yet it was not because of chance, not because of luck, but because something chose to stand in that moment, something chose to remain, and that choice has changed everything. She steps forward slowly, moving toward the couch, lowering herself into it with care, her body relaxed, her mind no longer searching for what might go wrong, but resting in what is. And Rex shifts slightly as she moves, not in reaction, but in alignment, adjusting his position so that he remains within sight, within reach, always within that quiet space that connects them. And Olivia notices this, not for the first time, but with a clarity that feels final. Something that no longer needs to be understood further, something that simply is. She leans back into the couch, her eyes drifting toward the nursery for just a moment, not out of fear, not out of instinct, but out of habit that now feels lighter, softer, and she does not move to check. She does not feel the need to rise, because she knows, not in a way that demands proof, but in a way that rests quietly within her, that everything is as it should be. She looks back at Rex, her gaze steady, her expression calm, and for a moment there is nothing between them. No question, no hesitation, just presence, and she speaks, her voice soft, almost lost in the quiet of the room. You stayed when I did not know how. The words simple, but they carry something deeper, something that reaches beyond explanation, and Rex does not respond in any visible way. He does not move closer, does not shift his posture dramatically, but his eyes meet hers for just a second longer than usual, just enough to acknowledge what has been said, just enough to hold that moment before letting it pass. And Olivia feels it, that quiet connection, that understanding that does not require language. She lowers her gaze back to Noah, adjusting him slightly in her arms, her fingers brushing lightly across his cheek, and he stirs, a small movement, a soft sound, nothing more, but enough to remind her of the life she holds, the responsibility she carries, and the presence that now shares it with her. And she exhales slowly, her shoulders relaxing fully, the last trace of tension leaving her without resistance, without hesitation. The house remains quiet, the world outside continuing in its distant rhythm, but inside, something has settled into place, something that does not shift with time or light, something that remains steady. Through every moment, every breath, every quiet movement that follows, and Olivia leans back further into the couch, her eyes closing for just a second, not out of exhaustion, not out of need, but out of trust. And nearby, Rex remains where he is, his body still, his presence unwavering, not as a guard, not as a shadow, but as something more, something chosen, something that does not need to be named to be real. And in that quiet, in that stillness, the story does not end with a moment of victory.